Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Senior College. My name is Jennifer Reed, and we are here today for a very special event about Irish culture, experience, and history with our own Paul Phelan. Am I
Pelan, Pelan.
Palin?
Yep,
Palin. I don't know why
yep.
I want to use an F
That's
there.
all right. No, there's a name with an
Palin.
H in it. Pelan. Yep.
So welcome, Paul. It's great to have you. We'll get started with your presentation in just a moment, but we're so excited because Senior College is embarking upon a historical time for us as an organization in that we are going to both the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland in May 2025, led by Paul. And he'll be taking us on a literary and cultural adventure for 7 nights. And so this event is part of that experience. So even if you don't end up going on the experience, you still have an opportunity to learn more about Irish culture and history and literature, of course, by working with us in Senior College. And so if you are not a member, we would love to have you as a member, especially because we have a course that is starting on October 3rd with Paul, and that course is called Exploring Modern Ireland Through Literature, the next chapter. It's called the next chapter because Paul taught a similar class as past semester, and so he's basically back with us by popular demand, focusing on different books and in Irish literature, Irish authors. So he can, of course, tell you a little bit more about that course. But that course starts on October 3rd, 2024. It's 6:30 to 7:50 p.m. It's offered via Zoom. So it's very convenient for folks that might live outside of our geographic area. And it is one of our courses that is recorded. So it's really nice. So if you're a member of Senior College, you can watch the course at a later time. So if you're busy that night, or maybe you have another class at the same time, you can always get caught up. And especially if you're interested in going on the trip, a great way to be engaged and thinking about all things Ireland would be to take his course, of course. And I think he'll offer a course again in the spring too, even to get even more ready for us to be on this adventure to Ireland. So I also wanted to remind folks that coming up next week at the same time, so this would be September 23rd at 2 p.m., we will be having a Zoom session like this, but it will be focused more exclusively on the trip itself, the itinerary, all the things that we will visit. One of the things that's not officially on the itinerary, but I know will make it happen, is a visit to the Temple Bar, which is one of the most, popular sort of touristy bars. But I know we'll go to a lot of other maybe more historic and authentic pubs with Paul, because I know he knows all the ins and outs of the great spots to go to in Dublin. But this is the picture that's behind me. I've been to Ireland, I think 4 times, 5 times, and it's my favorite place on earth. So I'm excited that I get to share that with all of you that are interested in exploring Ireland in more depth. So look for us next Monday at 2 p.m. If you don't have the link, just shoot us an email for the Zoom invitation. And also we will record that session as well. So if you can't make it, don't worry about that. Paul, let's talk more things Ireland. Oh, wait, can I just do one
Sure.
thing real quick? I just want to share my screen more. Just to give the 2-second plug for the trip. Just give me one moment. Okay, share. So if you haven't already, I would strongly encourage you to check out. We have a 6-page flyer for this trip and for Paul's course, which you can see on the screen here. And of course, you can always reach out to me directly. I'd be happy to jump on a Zoom call with you or a phone call to talk in more depth about Senior College in general, of course, or the trip or Paul's upcoming course. So I'm just scrolling through now so you can see, here's the details about his course that are coming up in October. And I think a lot of you here on this call would probably already have seen this as well. And this talks about the other event that we're having next week. Of course, you see the Guinness, and we will be visiting the Guinness factory, which is so exciting. Okay, and Paul, you just let me know when you want me to start sharing my screen for your slides, and I will
Sure.
hopefully get that up and going.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that introduction. And welcome, everyone. And I see some old faces and some new faces. So, hi to Catherine and Tom and Cornelia who took my class. And I apologize if there's anybody else there who took the class and I'm not noticing. But very excited to for this course and based for this program in Ireland, but also to tell you a little bit about the book course we'll be doing beginning in October, as Jen said. And I've started specifically with Dubliners because some of you may have read Dubliners, some may have not. But since we're going to be spending time in Dublin, I think it's so apropos that we do, arguably Ireland's greatest writer, James Joyce. And funny enough, I would say to you that are taking the class, I've read Dubliners so many times, and it's by far my favorite short story book, short collection of stories ever. And I'm listening to it again, and you can get it old school on CDs from the library. And it's some of the writers we did last year reading it: Frank McCourt, his brother Malachi, other Irish writers and actors are reading the stories, and it is absolutely brilliant. I'd never actually heard it read before, and the stories just jump off. I was actually out at Bridgewater this morning. I teach in the prison there. Teach on campus at Bridgewater this semester, and I also teach in the prison down at Bridgewater. So that's my traveling companion. Listen to James Joyce. So you're going to do whether you do my class or not. I recommend reading Dubliners, and you can get it out of the Minuteman Library and get it. I think it's about 6 CDs. Absolutely brilliant, and it'll give you and when you're reading it or listening to it, describes in great detail all the famous streets and pubs of Dublin. So some of it, I read about that street, Westmoreland Street or Grafton Street, as I was listening to this book, and now we're walking around them, and hotels that are still there from that day, Shelbourne. In fact, Joyce had said on his great book Ulysses that if Dublin burnt down tomorrow, you could reconstruct the city because it's a day in the life of Dublin. Leopold Bloom, you walk around him around Dublin and all these famous watering holes and places of worship and everything else. So we're doing Dubliners, and we're doing two other writers. One is a contemporary writer. I want you to Anne Enright from Dublin. Believe she taught at Trinity College. So we'll be doing her book, The Gathering, which I think was nominated and/or won the Booker Prize. I'm rereading all these books because I choose the books very carefully. I choose them in books that I've read before. I go back and reread them, and books that I think will be accessible and challenging and entertaining to you all. And now, it's not everyone's cup of tea. We can't all agree. It'd be boring if we did. And the final book is a great book by John McGahern, who is a disciple, you could say a disciple loosely, of James Joyce in terms of his themes that he was banned in Ireland in the 1960s because, again, he dealt with themes that Joyce dealt with that were not appropriate. Ireland's obviously opened up as a society since then, but he wrote about themes about family, religion, institutions, the dreaded word sex, which we didn't talk about in Ireland that time. So we've got that book as well. And I'll talk all about this in the course because one of his last books he wrote has been filmed, and it'll be opening up in America next year. It's called A Day May See the Rising Sun. And it's already played in Ireland, but that's something to look out forward to if you enjoy McGahern's writing in his books. So on that, very excited about this trip, and I think the genesis of this trip either came from me, or I want to credit to some of our students in the class last term, because someone might have said, "Oh, why don't we do this for real?" In person, like go to Ireland, bam, out of that. And then I called Jen and she was all over it. It was like, whoa, my experience has been an institution, slow, bureaucratic. We have to have community meetings. She just made it happen with her boss. And I was like, wow, this is so exciting. So I hope you can tell I'm very excited about the trip. I've just been to Ireland in late August. I go home for 2 weeks every year. And I saw so many people in Dublin Airport when I was leaving, so many American people on tours, checking out their ancestry, going all over the country. And what I want from our trip is that it's all experiential. We have a wonderful experience and we laugh. We might even cry sometimes, but mostly laugh. And that we come away, more aware of Ireland's rich cultural history and build on the knowledge and passion that you already have about Ireland, be it in your roots, be it in your history or family or anything else. So we'll come away with that, and we will have a great experience in 7 days. Hopefully get a really in-depth, as much as we can, experience of what what makes Ireland tick? You know, the energy of the people, the beautiful countryside, and the rich historical legacy, particularly in literature, which is what we'll be focusing on. But they all bleed together. It's not like they're siloed, like, okay, we just study Irish politics and we don't study Irish literature. They all bleed together. James Joyce, who wasn't, he was apolitical, still took a lot of political stances about different countries. In fact, many Irish writers, as you may or may not know, exiled. They left Ireland because they felt it was oppressive. And they all went, whether it was Oscar Wilde, Yeats went away for a while, Samuel Beckett, and Joyce went away. And someone said to him, and I'm sort of paraphrasing here, well, did you move to England? He said, God, no, I'm not moving to England. Joyce was very clear. I'm not going to live in what he saw as the colonial oppression of Ireland. And Joyce spent his time traversing around Italy and Paris. And there's a great film that you can see. It actually focuses on Joyce's wife, Nora, who was behind Nora Barnacle, who married from Galway. There's a film called Nora. It's about her life and her role in James Joyce, because without her, he wouldn't have written Ulysses. I think it took him 16 years. So she was a real saint to be with James Joyce, because he was not an easy man to live with. His philandering, his drinking, his debt, everything else. But out of that genius came Ulysses when he finally published, and it was done, I think, in 1922. So on that, I think I'm just going to show you a quick presentation, and then we'll have time for comments and questions and about the presentation or any other aspect of the book, our book club, and our trip to Ireland. So thank you, Jen. So that's a picture of the Giant's Causeway, which we'll all get to visit if you haven't visited before. Again, I've been there many times. It's just a wonderful, amazing, volcanic sense. One of the considered 9 wonders or 8 wonders of the world, just the way the rocks are all hexagonally shaped. So we'll get up to the Giant's Causeway, and that's right up on the north of Ireland, not the most northern point, but up the most northern point of the north of Ireland, as Ireland was separated politically and geographically. That's the most northern point in Northern Ireland. So we'll take a trip up there, talk along the way, see the little towns. So we go through Cushendall and Ballycastle and all these great places, and even where the Game of Thrones is shot, scenes of Game of Thrones. So we'll have a good time, and we'll learn. We'll be hopefully that all this history and knowledge of Ireland is all sinking in, and all our comments and observations and questions and what we bring to the table will enrich our experience, I believe, totally. So thank you, Jen. Next slide, please. So I could have picked any quote, but I picked a quote from Patrick Kavanagh, who's from Monaghan, which is in the north of Ireland, but when the country was separated in 1922, it was given to the south for political reasons, because there were more Catholics in Monaghan than there was Protestant. And Patrick Kavanagh, and we're in Dublin, we'll go and see a little statue of Patrick Kavanagh right down in Rathmines along the river, because he wrote some of his greatest poetry and books. He wrote a book called The Great Hunger, a poem. It's a long, long poem just about the famine in Ireland. And he wrote this quote: "The sun rose and set in a land of dreams, whether the clocks were right or wrong." And I think it's saying, we all interpret that whatever way we want, but for me, it's saying that Ireland is a place of mysticism and magic and myth and all that there. It doesn't matter what the clocks are right or wrong. Ireland is a place full of hope and dreams, and that's kind of what I think kind of makes Ireland what it is in some sense. So thank you. Next slide, please, Jen.
1 second. There we go.
Thank you for doing this. Okay, so I thought we'd just start. This is a very broad, general overview of Ireland. Ireland punches well above its weight. It's a small island of 6 million people, but known all over the world, and hopefully for good reasons. Not as a country that invaded other countries or stole land, but not that we're capable of it. We just didn't, because we were already being dominated by England. But our storytelling, our sense of telling stories through literature, through art, through music, it's well known all over the world. You can go to most places in the world, and you probably find an Irish pub, be it in deepest China, deepest Africa, or Vietnam. They're everywhere. And this book, The Tane, is a Celtic myth book, and I teach this to students normally in at Bridgewater State. We look at Celtic myth and how that has influenced contemporary writers. And there's a picture there of a bull, and cows and bulls were very popular currency in Ireland. People would rob and steal bulls and barter them before we had money. And the Táin is a historic story about a queen and a king who are married, Queen Maeve, and she has everything, materially everything, and they have this argument. The book opens up with on their bed, but the one thing she doesn't have is this prized bull. She wants it, and she goes to war over the bull. And that's a great book to read. The Táin, famous book. It's all mythology. It was all orally, wasn't written. It was and then passed down through the ages. So that's kind of, I'd say loosely, where perhaps early literature takes its onus from in early Ireland. Next slide, please, Jen. Thank you. And I hope I'm not talking too fast, because I know I do speak too fast with my accent. So I hope you're all with me in this. Medieval Irish literature. Where did it all start? Poetry and prose, development, sophisticated allegorical and narrative poetry. The writings of poets like Ingus and his name is Fade Mea, I believe it's pronounced. Angus was an early 1200, so lots of beautiful poem. Never, I have to admit, I haven't read any of his stuff. I just know about him. And Feidmad was a bit of a monster. He attacked churches and led battles and all, but he's also supposed to be a great scholar. So maybe that's some of the where and we're actually going to visit a great place when we leave Dublin, going around to Belfast. We'll be visiting a place and looking at all these great Celtic gravestones and statues and everything. So that's going to be, think about that when we that's all there. It's there are some monuments in Ireland that are reputedly older than the pyramids in ancient in Egypt. So we get a sense of the sense of mysticism. And Newgrange, where if you haven't been to Newgrange, where they're unbelievable that you walk through, and one day it catches all the light in the longest day of the year in June. How did they know that? How did they know to do that? And thousands of years ago, to build this tomb, and what does it symbolize? What does it honor? What does it represent? But it's an amazing sight. So we'll move on to the next one. Thank you. So you may have now we're getting a bit more modern. Jonathan Swift, people will know Gulliver's Travels, and Jonathan Swift was a Protestant, was a dean. We will go and see the cathedral he was the dean of in Dublin, Christchurch. We'll see that dating from the 1700s. Swift was quite a radical. Love his haircut, right? Jonathan Swift wrote Gulliver's Travel, and it's a real allegory or about people in power, and land of Lilliput. Made a terrible film. I think it might Walt Disney might have made it years ago. It's a terrible, corny adaptation. But when we go to Belfast, we will see it's called Napoleon's Nose, the Cave Hill at the top of Belfast. And you will see, like, if you look at it, you can see it visually. It looks like a body that's stretched flat on its ground with a big nose. And that's how Gulliver's Travel opens up. Land of Lilliput, and he's been tied down by the Lilliputians, the small people. And Swift apparently got his inspiration to begin Gulliver's Travel from looking at the Cave Hill in Belfast, and that's how he owned it. And we will see that as we're going up the Antrim coast. I'll point it out to you, and you'll see it. You'll see right up. You'll see it. It overlooks Belfast. Maria Edgeworth. You know, in a lot of traditions, only now we're beginning to recognize the role of women in literature. And for years that was ignored. But Maria Edgeworth wrote a lot about Castle Rackrent. It's one of her famous novels. She wrote about the drudgery and oppression that poor people lived in Ireland under landlord misuse and misrule of power and abuse. And that's what she wrote about that. And Castle Rackrent it's an awesome novel. That's the only one I've read of her. I'd love to read more of her. These are things for retirement to do the reading. But just to think, Maria Edgeworth, an important literary and scholarly figure, along with a lot of other women in Ireland, both contemporary times and historical times. Next one, please, Jen. Thank you. So now we come to what was, and we'll talk a lot about this, particularly in Dublin, the Irish literary revival, late 19th and early 20th century. So, as some of you may know, Ireland was under the yoke of English oppression from 1300, and Ireland continually and consistently resisted a British rule, through three methods: either military, fighting back. The IRA were a modern version of that, the Irish Republican Army, or through political stands, through Charles Stewart Parnell and Daniel O'Connell. We will see O'Connell Street, the main thoroughway in Dublin, named after Daniel O'Connell, a great liberator. And the other prong, if you like, of Irish resistance to British rule was an Irish literary revival led by William Butler Yeats and Lady Gregory, two of the figures there. And they said, you know what, we've been so thoroughly colonized. We speak English. Irish was still, it was a dying language on its knees in many ways. And that was a direct result of British colonialism, was that it was illegal under the penal laws to speak in Irish. You could go to jail or be hanged for it. But Yeats and Gregory turned that on their head and said, you know what? Okay, we speak English now. We will have a literary revival in English because that is the spoken language. And so he founded the Abbey Theatre. We'll see the Abbey Theatre. Maybe there'll be a good play. Dublin is famous for a vibrant theatre and literary scene. And Yeats created that along with Lady Gregory. And J.M. Synge was born in Dublin, but he actually went and lived on the west of Ireland in the Aran Islands, and he wrote about the peasantry. And he wasn't too praiseworthy of the Irish peasant life. And when his play was put on in the Abbey Theatre, people booed it and threw rotten tomatoes at it. They were not happy because they'd been used to being vilified by the English. And here was an Irish playwright who was actually critiquing Irish people and Irish ways of life. But it then in literary history, it became to be recognized as a great play. It's a playboy of the Western world, a great play to read. And Yeats, because Yeats was an innovator, Yeats encouraged Synge to write his plays and actually go and research and live on the west of Ireland and the Aran Islands. And Lady Gregory also wrote great plays and poetry, and women were as important in the literary revival as the men were, just as they were in the rising against England, 1916 rising, and went beyond that. So thank you. Next one, Jen. Thank you. Okay, so now we look at modern writers. There we have James Joyce, short life, as you can see, unlike Beckett, who lived a long time. Well, it's a famous picture. Beckett was very photographic. Look at that chiseled face and the hair, looks like a sparrow, a bird, but lived in France, spoke French. And Joyce, of course, was very critical about life in Ireland, and his books were banned at the time because he was very critical of the Catholic Church, of Irish nationalism, and the whole fabric of Dublin society. And when you read, and I'll say when rather than if, when you read Dubliners and hopefully listen to it, you will see the subtle criticisms he's making of people who lived what he considered trapped lives. There's several quotes you'll see in the book where people are always trying to escape and live, whether an individual as an artist, to leave Ireland, and that's what he did in his life. And James Joyce was a great chronicler of life in Dublin and Irish life, and getting into the minute details of relationships and people's personalities. And one of my favorite writers. I absolutely never get tired of reading Dubliners, and I'm infused with a new spirit of enthusiasm. I've been telling people about read Dubliners again. Talking to my family today. Read it again. They've all read it because it's so. No matter how many times I read, I'm still getting an awful lot of inspiration and joy out of reading that book. And because I don't think he's like a total cynic, because that's just, it's important to be a healthy amount of cynicism, but he's not a total cynic because he believed that you could liberate yourself, and he did it through his writings. But interestingly, even though he had a love-hate relationship to Ireland, all his writings are all set in Ireland. All his books are based in Ireland, including his poetry, but the themes are universal. They're not just based in Irish geography. And I think the last slide we have here, Jen, is the final one. So this is just really right up to date. The Gathering on Enright. I'm currently reading that at the moment, rereading it, because we're going to be doing it. That is our second book after Dubliners. I wanted to bring it right into the modern day, Dublin, life in Ireland in the 21st century. So I hope you'll get to read that book. And she has been big in the Irish literature. It's still as vibrant and as active and as important as it ever was, the writers. And there's another one, Sally Rooney, Normal People, won the Costa Novel Award in I think about near 2020 or something around that period. I read the book and I also watched the series. I actually thought the series, Irish television did an adaptation. Two young people, very much set in contemporary Ireland. Two young people. They both go to college. They're both from the countryside, and then how they both differ and how in terms of where they're at. And it's a kind of a deals with contemporary themes because a lot of contemporary themes in Ireland are around immigration. And in fact, when I was back in Ireland recently, there's been a lot of protests. There's a lot of protests for supporting people who, because Ireland is a country like we left. We had to go and fight our way after the famine. So it's and there's a whole debate going on in Ireland about immigrants and stealing our jobs and all this sort of things. And but a massive show of support that people who come into this country are bringing a lot of their own culture. So that you will see, and we'll talk about that. We're in Ireland, the new Ireland that we're living in today, and in the north of Ireland, post-conflict society, a society that's recovering and dealing with 30 years of a brutal and violent conflict, and how there is hope for me, for others about current conflicts in the world that we're not out of the water completely, but I think we're never going back. That how we got out of that 30-year conflict and how we're building hopefully a new pluralist, accepting, diverse Ireland. And that has to be, I believe, kind of something, a mirror we can look up and look at other conflicts in the world that are often presented as intractable, unsolvable, perennial. That's what I wrote my thesis when I did my master's in Irish politics, solutions to the Northern Ireland conflict. And people believed and argued that there was no solutions, that it would never end, that, oh, people in Ireland are always fighting. And I don't have that nihilistic view. I would be more the glass is half full rather than half empty. But it takes courage and effort and honesty and to say you're wrong sometimes. So that's kind of a very, very broad overview. And I think we will get a lot of this and a lot of this as we learn about Ireland. So open up. Thank you for any questions, comments, feedback, anything at all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was
You're very
amazing.
welcome. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that show Normal People, I haven't read the book, but I want to read the book, but I watched the show and it's excellent. It's on Hulu if anyone wants to see it. It's with Paul
Right.
Mescal, and he's quite the up and coming famous Irish actor. He's very popular. It's very well done. So that's on Hulu if anyone's looking for that. But yeah, well, let's just get right into the questions. Connie, did you have a question?
I don't have a question. I have a statement. Paul, you made me read Angel's Ashes last semester, and I forced my way through it. And interestingly, I met two women who have immigrated from Ireland to America, and they grew up in Limerick. And they said to me, "Oh, that's a bunch of hogwash. That wasn't true." And I looked at them and I said, "Where did you grow up?" They said, "In the country." I said, "Then you had no
Mm.
idea what went on in the cities." And now I'm just finishing the Dubliners.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, I somehow I got ahead of myself. The one I enjoyed the most was that book, The Dead. And I
Mm.
remember they made a movie out of that, and it was so
Yes.
beautiful. And as a matter of fact, I did a YouTube thing on the song, the something of Achram.
Yeah,
It was
lots of
so
Auckland.
it was so beautiful. So I'm hopefully, depending on my health, being able to go with you this May.
Oh, love that. I hope you can. We'll be rooting for you.
Thank you.
Oh, great, Connie. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Any other questions or observations about Irish history, culture? Feel free to unmute yourselves and ask, or you can type it in the chat as well. I'll ask a question, Paul. So one thing I
Yep.
noticed, with the times that I've been to Ireland, as you say, is around um, it seems like the Irish have to me, I know you talked about, obviously the Troubles, but in modern Ireland, it seems like they're incredibly accepting,
Mhm.
and sort of, uh, and I always wonder when you visit countries that aren't a superpower, you know what I mean? Like and that's why I think why I fantasize about living in Ireland, like being in a country where you can't be an oppressor because you don't have, you're not a global superpower with, nuclear weapons. And so can you speak to that? Like, I'm curious about, you live here in America, like, how do you kind of come to terms with the different, the differences between living in a country that is a global superpower with, what all that responsibilities mean for us in the world globally, and how the United States supports, things that maybe you don't personally support in regards
Mhm.
to wars and all kinds of things. I don't know
No,
if
it's a
you
it's a
form that much
it's
as
a
a
great
question, but
yeah, it's a great question and observation, Jen. I think that from a personal experience, when I go back to Ireland and I visit Ireland, I don't romanticize it. There's a lot of issues of parts of Ireland, that aspects of the life I don't like or necessarily relate to. But I would say, in a general sense, Ireland, because it is a smaller nation, and it's a nation now of, it used to be very one-dimensional. It was all white and either Catholic or Protestant, and for better or worse, that demographic has changed significantly. So now you will see lots of black faces, lots of Asian faces, South American, Eastern European, because the it's a global world now, and the Republic of Ireland had to enter the main, because economically it needed to join Europe. And one aspect in the Irish Republic now is life economically, not for everybody. There's still a lot of homelessness and challenges in our country, mental illness and everything. But general, I'm being very general here, not to be careful. But I rode my bike around Ireland last year, and it used to be, for years and years, the south of Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, had poor infrastructure, poor roads. You saw more poverty, more hardship. That has changed because there's been a lot of money come in from the European community, because they needed those roads to export goods and grow. So you see a very vibrant life in the south of Ireland. You go to a small city like Galway. Yeah, it's a bohemian kind of. People used to say people go there to just retire and die and read poetry. It's a little bit of that there, but it's just so vibrant when you go there, and you'll see now in supermarkets, in hotels, a lot of people aren't Irish, who live there now, first generation being born, and that is a byproduct. Now, that has challenges because there is racism and hostility in Ireland towards the other, the outsider, taking our jobs, and you get that in America too. But by and large, it's a much more modern and mobile society, and I don't think, I don't think that the acquisition of money and material wealth is as pronounced in Ireland as it is, as my experience in America. I even find, for example, you have a personal anecdote. When anybody comes to do work in my house or work in my car, I always feel it's very expensive. And I feel like in Ireland, maybe it's a bit more honest about people not trying to rip you off or exploit you. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in Ireland, and I don't want to romanticize it, but I do think there's maybe a sense still more about where are you from, how can I connect you, than rather than what do you do. In other words, how much money do you make, and do I want to talk to you? And I cycle here in America and I cycle in Ireland. And obviously, I'm culturally closer to Irish people than I would be to Americans, but I would show up at a group, people wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't say anything to me. A big group of cyclists, they just wouldn't say. And I would be, oh, how's your name? What, blah, blah, blah. Kind of talk to me. That would be completely different in Ireland. And I did a big cycle in the summer in Western Mass, and I purposely wore an Irish cycling jersey because I knew people would talk, oh, you're from Ireland, because there's an interest in Ireland. People, either their origins are Irish, and it's usually very positive, rather than say wearing a Union Jack. And I feel that's some of the difference, that people and dialogue, communication. It's a bit richer. And obviously, you have to, different parts of America. America is not all, it's not uniform, it's not monolithical. It's very different. Like in New Orleans, for example, I found people in New Orleans are more approachable. And maybe I'm generalizing people in Boston. And then you may or may not surprise you. But when I go to New York, because New York is kind of a melting pot, I always find people in New York would be generally more chatty on the street. I'm generalizing here, of course. And I think because Ireland isn't a superpower, there is maybe there's a good level of literacy and knowledge about the world, and you may or may not be surprised when you go there how much Irish people know about American politics. And there is a romantic love towards America. I mean, and that's both good and bad, but we grew up in my family situation on a diet of some of the best aspects of American culture. And people are too quick to jettison great aspects of American culture and be negative about. But America has given us so much from, whatever you think of one's politics, John Wayne. I grew up watching all his films, and I watched Humphrey Bogart and Spencer Tracy and all this great American cinema, because America was a modern country, and jazz music. So a lot of people look towards America for positive reasons, because America still culturally is unique in the world, and maybe that's been whittled away. But I'm not. I don't generalize about. I don't want to generalize about people, but I feel that in Ireland, when you go, anybody who goes on a trip, you might find that it's a wee bit slowed down from the pace of a life in America. Maybe we're not in such a hurry to get from A to B. Like, I rode around Ireland my bike, and I didn't get one irate motorist. Nobody trying to run us off the road. I rode yesterday, and I got three people, and we were in single file just shouting at us. I don't know why. I don't know why, but it's like, do they not like cyclists? We're riding single file, we're on a quiet road, and people are just angry. Again, these are all anecdotal things. Maybe they say something bigger, maybe they don't. But I feel that one of the takeaways will be Ireland's a bit more slowed down, and there's more time for people. And again, I'm have to be careful, because that's a very general statement. Yeah.
No, I mean,
Thank you.
Paul, thank you for that. I appreciate your comments so much. And I also found that Irish people are incredibly knowledgeable about American current events, the political system. I mean, they know the names of every Irish senator in Congress. And they can tell you what they're working on and their bills, and they know a lot more, I think, than the average person that I interact with around the American political system, which I just find I find it refreshing, because I think it's a real testament to their level of curiosity about, us as a nation. I think that's really interesting. So thank you. Okay, I see Connie and then Tom.
I think Tom should be ahead of me because he's been waiting.
Okay, go ahead, Tom. Go for it.
Well,
You have to unmute. Okay.
I'm really interested. We were in Ireland before Brexit happened, and there was a lot of anxiety and ambivalence among the people I talked to about what would happen. So I'm really interested in the dynamics between Ireland and Northern Ireland, post Brexit, and how that's how that's affected their life. Also, I'd like to take note that the post office in Dublin, hopefully that's on the tour. That puts that's a living monument, I think, to the uprising, and really meat on the bones of the history. I think it really brought it home for me. But yeah. Wow.
Thank you, Tom. And absolutely, we do a walking tour of Dublin, and to echo what Tom said, the General Post Office, an impressive building in the centre of Dublin, was where was the seat of the headquarters of the 1916 Rising, where James Connolly, Patrick Pearse, Plunkett all took over and led the Rising. Of course, the Rising failed after 7 days. The leaders were taken out or executed. So we will visit that, and we will visit the jail, and you'll see some of the prison cells where they were incarcerated in, and the courtyard where they were shot, including James Connolly, who was strapped to a wheelchair because he gangrene from the shots, and James Plunkett, who was able to get married the night before in the prison, in the cell. The beautiful, his last letter. So that's all integral part, a huge part of Irish history. And in regards to Brexit, I think people in the Republic of Ireland, because the Republic is part of Brexit in Europe, that's been good for them, because we're still part of mainstream Europe. And there's a lot that's not good in Europe happening. We have a lot of fascistic conservative governments who are blaming, again, the immigrants are easy scapegoats for economic problems. This is how Hitler came to power, and then we know what happened with what he did. So, but people in the South, it's generally speaking, there's a buoyancy, there is a sense of optimism, a sense of getting on with life. But there's also, dualistically with that, there is homelessness, there is crime, There's drug wars in parts of Dublin. So we have all those ugly manifestations of contemporary city life. And politicians are always being changed because they seem to just do the same thing over and over again. In the north of Ireland, I would say, largely speaking, we we don't have such much divided community as when I grew up, but in the working class areas, and you will see this when you go to Belfast, we will go to the so-called Peace Wall that separates Protestants from Catholics in working class Belfast. There's still an enormous separation. And that's very sad, even though there are community workers, people who were involved in the conflict are trying to build reconciliation and peace and forgiveness. So we'll see all that. And the North, finally, we have a devolved government that's meeting for the first time, but there's still a lot of, I would call, a legacy of the Troubles in terms of division. And sadly, around the summertime, we have a lot of marching. The Ulster Protestants are still marching, celebrating victories of 1690. So there is division, but in other ways, in the university life, in middle class life, when you go to Belfast, it's not the city that it was that I grew up, and that's to be welcomed. So I still think we're moving forward. And there's even some people who have legacy issues that they're rioting, they're burning buses, young kids, because they felt they got post traumatic stress that they never got, but their parents grew up in. So we have work to do. We have work to do, Ireland, North and South. I would hope to see in my lifetime a reunification of Ireland, that Ireland could stand independently, whatever that means in a global context, and that we could have a shared identity in the Ireland where England is going to play a part with no animosity, no need to have any animosity towards English life. They're so entwined now, Ireland and England, and have been for so long, but sometimes in a negative way. And that's changing largely, but it's going to take generations to do that. But I think there's still, Jen talked about living in Ireland. I would happily live in Belfast with all its warts and the things I don't like about it, because I still feel there's a real sense of community and pub life. When I go home, I go cycling, I meet my friends in the pub at life. I like the atmosphere. I like the fact that in Ireland, pubs get awards if they're dog friendly or cat friendly. So as long as your dog's well behaved, and even little things like that, I like that you can bring your dog to the pub. Why not? And dogs are. I mean, I'm going off on some tangent here. Dogs are allowed in buses and trains. And things like acknowledgement in Ireland when you get old, when you've paid your dues, when you get to 65, you get free public transportation over the whole island, buses and trains. You go from Belfast to Dublin for the day on a train. And I'd like to see more of that in America, more like, hey, why couldn't we have that? And perhaps although we're a capitalistic country in America, or in Ireland, sorry, there's still a sense of the we of community. When you reach 65, you can also join a gym or a public swimming pool free. Things like that. These are rewards for your taxes. And of course, the governments are coming after that. The new Labour government in England are trying to take that away. People are fighting for that. Like, no, we earned this. We campaigned for this. We campaign with our local government, and I things like that. I think represent some of the best aspects of Ireland. But we have racism, we have hostility towards each other, but people are resisting that. Thank you for a good question, Tom and Connie.
I just have a quick question. I was speaking to a woman recently who was sitting beside me in the senior center here in Waltham, and she had a brogue. But she was insulted when I said to her, "Oh, you have a lovely brogue." And she looked at me with a very superior air and she said, "I have an accent." And I said to her, "I'm so sorry. I mean, I know how the term brogue came about.
Ah.
I didn't know whether it's interchangeable or not. But then I got it good at the end. She said to me, and she said, "I'm an Irish citizen." So I gave her my biggest smile and I said, "And so am I." So she shut up. But is there a question of using the term brogue or accent now? Do you know?
No, I don't think it matters. If that person may have been super sensitive. I don't know what her history was, but maybe brogue is kind of considered a bit of a more old-fashioned term now. We might say accent, but I'm surprised that someone would take umbrage to that. You know what I mean? So, because you were So obviously you're complimenting the lady, you know, you were saying, oh,
It
you've got a
was.
lovely work. Someone said that to me. I'd be like, thank you, I'll take that all day. Compliments are good, bring them on. So that's interesting. That may just have been her personality.
Yeah.
We'll take that as an individual rather than a
I didn't
general thing.
like
But
her very much anyway.
if you want to say brogue, I'd say brogue. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. I could listen to you all day. I could listen to your accent or your brogue all day, every day. And we're really appreciative of your engagement with senior college. And I just wanted to say that, yeah, the beautiful thing about senior college, it's located structurally within the College of Continuing Studies here at Bridgewater State University. And luckily, within this division of the university, we do have the ability to be flexible and agile and add things. And you know, we have a lot of support around creativity. So that's why we're here with you. And we have the 60 courses, and yours is one of them this fall. We've grown quite a bit, a ton since we started in the fall of 2019, in-person classes in Hingham, Plymouth, Easton, and Bridgewater.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and we also are looking forward to doing more trips. You know, I was just having conversation with Linda, who works in our office, and she's a huge Broadway person. So we're thinking of maybe adding an overnight trip to New York City. I see some heads nodding, and so I think that would be so fun to go see a show. You know, we've had a Broadway course that's very popular in the past, that's specifically focused on the history of the great Broadway shows. And then, of course, you know, if this trip is successful, we will do. Oh, Molly's clapping her hands. All right, Molly, you'll be coming with us to New York. If this trip is successful, I would see that we'd be able to do a trip at least annually. And I also wanted to say, I did look at some other local lifelong learning programs at other universities, and I saw that our Ireland trip was thousands of dollars, thousands less expensive than their trips that they have planned for the May of 2025. So I'm proud of that. And we will always do our best to have our trips be of high quality, but at a price point that hopefully is affordable to a lot of folks in our audience. So come back next Monday at 2 p.m. That would be September 23rd, 2024. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can watch that on YouTube as well. And we hope you all have a great week and sláinte. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you so much, and I hope I'll see you some on my course soon. And I'll drop. I can do a BCC to everybody in the group to introducing the course and myself. So I'll get that list from Jen, and I'll send you an email about the books and everything. We already talked about how to get into Dubliners and get that CD and listen to Dubliners as Connie's been doing.
I'm getting ahead of my homework.
I love it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you for today. Bye.